Hello and welcome to episode 16 of The Weekly Wash. Today, as usual, I've got another 3 high-value recommendations that I think will improve your thinking and your life in general. I'm going to run straight in today and begin with an article. So recently, and when I say recently, I mean for quite a while now, maybe over the past couple of years, I've struggled to find good articles. I've struggled to find good writing. I think part of the reason for that might be because a lot of articles and writing is becoming more decentralized. So you're less likely to find people writing for big publications like the BBC, the newspapers, and a lot of the good writers are actually splintering off into writing for their own websites or a group that they've set up with a bunch of friends. There are though a few writers that I constantly return to, whose websites I constantly return to, and I feel like I can trust to always produce quality work. Paul Graham is one of these writers, and I feel like he just consistently puts out great articles and essays. They're not the most frequent things in the world, so he's not publishing like every single day or every single week, but when he does write something, you can pretty much guarantee that it's going to be decent. Paul's better known as a co-founder of Y Combinator, which is a company that specializes in early stage investing for startups. And Paul's writing, I mean, this is how I found Paul. I didn't know about Y Combinator before I found his writing. His writing, a bunch of his pieces have actually impacted my thinking quite a lot. This specific piece is called How to Think for Yourself. The title tells you all you need to know in terms of what the article is about. It's about how to think independently. And early on in the article, he talks about the type of jobs that require independent thinking and the type of jobs that don't. Spoiler alert, a lot of the best jobs, the jobs where you can make a lot of money and succeed and do something really impressive, do require independent thinking. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. During this passage of the piece, he zones in on what is required for someone to become a successful startup founder, saying you have to do something that sounds to most other people like a bad idea, but that you know isn't, like writing software for a tiny computer used by a few thousand hobbyists, or starting a site to let people rent airbeds on strangers' floors. For the rest of the essay, Paul talks about what it is that makes up an independent thinker and also talks through some general advice for how you might become one. He goes on to consider 3 main components that he considers to make up independent mindedness, and they are, according to Paul, fastidiousness about truth, resistance to being told what to think, and also curiosity. He then describes each of these traits and dives into whether they are something that we can develop or not. I'm not going to delve too deeply into it because I just want you to read the article, because my reproduction of it isn't going to inspire you like reading it did me, and also it's not going to give you the full information, so go check it out, it's great. I think that reading it will give you a better idea as to how you can come up with ideas that stand out and also create or give you a bit of a resistance to tribalistic thinking. Next up, and at risk of sounding a little bit repetitive, I want to recommend another episode of the Tim Ferriss Show. This one with Matthew McConaughey. Tim's got Paul now, man. It's easy to have preconceived ideas when we're thinking about Hollywood icons, and my preconceived impression of Matthew McConaughey was not necessarily a good one. Obviously, he was most known for doing rom-coms, and being a big fan of movies and acting in general, I didn't generally think of him as a good actor. For me, that changed when I watched the film Mud. There was also obviously The Wolf on Wall Street, Interstellar, Dallas Buyers Club, and then the series as well, True Detective. At the beginning of the podcast, Matthew tells a great story about his childhood where he suffered from a pretty serious bout of acne that was perhaps his mum's fault, that led to a court case that then got thrown out because of his good looks, which is all a bit crazy. He actually tells another great story, which is about how he transitioned from rom-coms to more serious movies, which that was probably the turning point in the podcast when I started to develop a real respect for him, and probably the wave where I thought that, you know what, I might actually buy his book. That's why he's about at the moment, by the way, because he's written a new book called Green Lights. So obviously when people write books, they just flip from podcast to podcast to podcast, and you just look at all of your favorite podcast creators, and all of a sudden they'll have the same author on at the same time. It's just promotional. Sometimes they do better interviews than others, but sometimes they just kind of repeat the same talking points of their books. You get that when you see like a celebrity go on like the Ellen Show, or in the UK, Jonathan Ross or Alan Carr, Chatty Man, if that's even still around. Listening to the podcast episode led me to the belief that actually not only is Matthew a really good storyteller, but also I was thinking like this guy's actually a pretty astute thinker. And I came to that conclusion after sort of hearing not just the stories, but the lessons that he took out of the stories, the pieces of wisdom that he took from those stories. And I think those pieces of wisdom make up the backbone of his book, Green Lights. So he said that it's not a memoir, it's not an autobiography, it's more of a playbook. I wasn't actually gonna get Green Lights, but listening to this podcast persuaded me to. So if you have sort of seen the book floating around and thought, oh, maybe I'm interested in that, but I don't really know whether this guy's got something to offer to me that I think will be valuable, then listen to the podcast with Tim. I think he did the Joe Rogan Experience as well, and he'll have done a bunch of other podcasts. In fact, on that topic, the book actually arrived today, so I may as well go and grab it and give you a quick look. There it is, and it's actually a really nice looking book. So obviously the sleeve is pretty nice, and I don't like sleeves on hardback books. I tend to just take them off and then dump them at the top of my bookshelf, not to be seen again until we move house. But the sleeve is nice. The actual bit underneath the sleeve is nice as well. So it's got this picture of a green light on there, and then a little nice message on the back. But what I'm most impressed with, throw that down there, is it's just a generally nice looking book. So it's got pictures in it. Actually, make sure I'm showing it. It's got colours, different colours in it. God, doesn't take much to impress me, does it? But yeah, it's just really well put together. I like the little icons of the green lights there. So yeah, I mean, I've only just started reading it, so I don't know how good it actually is yet. But I'll probably recommend the book in another episode. I mean, that would be a bit cheeky, wouldn't it? Recommending this kind of about the book in this episode, and then the book the next episode. No, I'll maybe write about it and put some up on my website. Finally, today I want to talk about a film, and specifically, I want to talk about a Christmas film. Hey, so the film is Christmas Chronicles. Christmas films only really have to pass a pretty low bar for us to enjoy them. You can pretty much, in the season, when we get to December, the end of November, and then December, you can pretty much wrap tinsel around any old bag of crap, and we'll just sit there with a grin on our face the whole time. Well, I will anyway, because I get excited for Christmas still, at the ripe old age of 27. But Christmas Chronicles isn't a bag of crap. I found Kurt Russell to be a really entertaining Santa. He had a lot more of a fuller character than we're usually used to with Santa. They kind of go for the old stereotype of like old man who I guess is a bit wise and jolly and does the ho ho ho. Kurt Russell did his own thing. On top of that, I liked the novel ways in which they represented Santa's magic, you know, Santa's ability to get from the North Pole to every single household around the globe. Because it's amazing how he does that, isn't it? I still don't understand how he does it. How does Santa get all those presents to all of us? Watching Christmas Chronicles put a smile on both mine and my girlfriend's faces, and it also made me laugh at various points. We watched it over the course of 2 separate evenings, so we were invested in the story enough to keep going with it. I should also point out that actually this was the first film and the second Christmas Chronicles came out in 2020. That's why we went to watch it, because the second one was being advertised on Netflix, and you can't start with 2 of anything, even Christmas Chronicles, especially Christmas Chronicles, man. 2020 has been a hell of a ride, man, but Christmas is coming and there is no year like this one for some guilt-free escapism. Right then, that's the end of the Weekly Wash 16. That's your 3 for the week. I might be back with another video before the end of the week, if you're lucky. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be something a little bit different. Until then, go and check my website out for my writing. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Like my video. Please, please, please like my video. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.